what happens to you doesn't decide who you'll become. And it won't always be this way.
Welcome back to the Bold Moves How Did You Know podcast, where we actively reject the narrative of a midlife crisis and instead step into our emboldened midlife clique. I'm your host and Bold Moves mentor, Kristen Rocco. If you have ever felt trapped, rehearsing pain, and wondering how to move forward, today's guest is the embodiment of what it means to reclaim your story, and I am not kidding. Trey Toler is an Atlanta-based author, keynote speaker, and stand-up comedian. For years, Trey has lived as the vulture in his own life, circling what was broken and staying anchored to trauma. His ultimate bold move, deciding that his grief wasn't going to be the final chapter of his story. Trey broke that cycle, transformed his life, and penned his powerful new memoir, Good Damage. Here's Good Damage, guys. For everyone who's listening, here's the book. Today, he writes and speaks so other people can stop surviving and find their own hummingbird faster than he found his. We are going to talk all about vultures and hummingbirds in this episode, so stay tuned. I have invited Trey to join me to discuss this memoir. You guys, it is so good. I hope you pick up a copy. It's called Good Damage, and we will dissect some of what's inside, but there will be so much more you will want to read on your own. Trey, hello. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Kristen, for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
I ripped through your memoir, Good Damage, and my first thought, I had two thoughts. The very first one was, damn, he's a captivating writer. I just couldn't believe the way that you were using words to bring your experience to life. It really was flawless for me, and I couldn't put it down. I think I, over like 3 sittings, finished it. But then the second thing, after I was like just enamored by the writing, was that I was baffled truly by all the tragedy you have experienced in this lifetime, and yet you are such a light in this world. What do you think is the universal truth that you want to share in writing this book that can connect all of us?
I think a universal truth is that we all go through situations in life that we don't necessarily open up about because we feel like nobody else can possibly understand or come close to what we're feeling or experiencing. And by speaking that and letting it out, you are setting yourself free. And not only are you setting yourself free, you open the door for somebody else who's potentially struggling with something similar or parallel, and you can pass that on to them. And they're like, hey, I don't even know this person, but they've gone through X, Y, and Z, and if they did it, then what's stopping me from doing it?
So good. Yeah, we're going to hear that theme as we kind of go through your story today, too.
Yes, we will.
I have taken some note around passages in your book, and on page 19, you wrote, certain moments redraw the map of your life in one stroke. The version you lived in before you knew, and the one left after that you couldn't forget. You say, 1 minute you're a person who's never lost a job, never had your heart handed back to you, never answered a call that rearranged your entire bloodstream. Then life does what it does. When you look back at your life, what was the hardest moment where you had to realize that while you couldn't control the circumstance, you were still responsible for the choice?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. There are many different before and after moments in my life. To focus on one specifically, since there are many, I think my mom's death is one of them, and I realized that when she died, there was no undoing that. You can't go back. There's no amount of anger, frustration, praying, hard work, diligence, therapy, anger, all the things. There's nothing you can do to ever have that back. And I know it sounds really silly to say this, but that's probably the first time in my life that I realized like death is real. Like I know that it's real, but it wasn't tangible. It didn't impact me other than losing a family member who was elderly or, a pet, which is still tragic, but very different from, losing a parent. So that encapsulates 100% when I realized, oh my God, like that door's closed, it can never be opened again.
I know in your book, there's a lot of different ways in which you responded to these circumstances, the death of your mother, and then many others. Can
Yeah.
you walk the listeners through some of the choices that you were making, the good and the bad, and how that impacted?
Yeah, for sure. I immediately after my mom died, I was in shock because of the way that she died, and I was there, and it was a sudden death. I didn't handle it well. I was self-medicating and numbing myself in every way possible, and I hadn't really struggled with any type of addiction I have an addictive personality. I'd never struggled with substance abuse disorder or anything of that nature, but the wheels came off when my mom died. And for about 18 months after her death, I was literally doing everything that I can to feel something, but also feel nothing. And it was just this rinse and repeat. And I look at it like the motivator. The motivator wasn't like, oh, I'm having a drink that's inherently bad, or I'm going out with friends to have a drink that is inherently bad. It was, I'm going out, I want to get blackout drunk as quickly as possible. And to continue drinking, I want to do cocaine, because that was the only thing that made me feel like my former self, because I had retracted inward. I was so sad, just so terribly sad. And I felt like on top of that sadness of losing my mom, I felt like everybody around me, i.e. my friends, they knew me as the Trey that you know, right? Like I'm outgoing. People say that I'm charismatic and friendly and funny and all of that. And I just couldn't tap it. So I became dependent on medicating myself to feel like I was myself. And by doing that, I mean, as anyone that's ever gone through something like that, it's just a means to an end. And, you throw your body off chemically, you feel like crap, you're not in a good headspace. At some point I realized, well, I've already done all of these things and, looked at a list of poor decisions I'd made. So what does it matter if I do it again? Or what does it matter if I do something else? And it's just such a self-destructive place of despair. And I couldn't see clearly for a long time.
Your book really had me the whole way, because there have been so much tragedy, so much bad cards that you've been dealt, circumstance. I just kept thinking about the tension between the circumstance and the choice the whole way. And I know, fast forward to where we are today, the positive changes and decisions that you've been able to make because of, some different realizations, which we'll get into. But it's a really fascinating book in that way, where you can really see how somebody can have these terrible things happen, and then you have to figure out, I mean, because you're your own person, you have to figure out how to deal with those in positive ways. And sometimes it takes stumbling blocks to get there. And yeah,
Woo!
yeah,
Some big ass blocks to
lots of
stumble
those,
on.
lots of those in
Oh
your
yeah.
stories. Hi, friend. It's Kristen. I hope you're really enjoying this episode. I just wanted to take a quick pause from today's conversation to ask you a question. How many times have you listened to a story on this show and seen yourself in my guest because their story was so relatable? I see you and I've got you. Inspiration is great, but it doesn't change your life without action. That's why I write the Bold Moves newsletter. I personally distill these episodes into the exact mindset shifts and bite-sized micro actions you can start using to make the change you're craving. So stop waiting, stop wondering, and together, let's make your bold move happen. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe right now, and I'll see you in your inbox. All right, now let's get back to this conversation. So I actually would love to go back to your childhood. There was another line I loved. It said, "We keep the performance polished because it's easier than admitting that the backstage looks nothing like the show." In the early part of your book, we learn that your circumstance at home wasn't the typical experience for a kid. And so looking back at your childhood, what was that polished performance protecting you from?
Absolutely. So there are two things going on parallel when I was growing up, and one of those is I grew up gay and in the South, and I was like hidden very back in the deep of a closet by like the winter coats, and that's like one part of it. And the other side of that coin is my mom had chronic lung disease, and the first time she was hospitalized was in 1995. It was in February, just a couple of weeks before I turned 10. And that pattern of my mom going into the hospital would continue for the next 15 years. And it was like clockwork. She would be in the hospital for weeks at a time. And the part of, being polished in the front, but backstage is crazy, really stems from the fact that I feel like I came out of the womb just this Jack Russell Terrier, talking all the time, making people laugh, and that's just who I am. I've always been that way. My mom had a leash for me when I was a kid because I was just such a little maniac. But I think that the polished part of that is I learned early in life that people reacted warmly to people who made them laugh, and that's how I learned to get love from people, by being humorous. People wanted to have me around because I was funny, even though my mom was stressed I could make her laugh. And basically everyone was laughing except my teachers in school or my mom when the teachers called. So for me, being able to polish the exterior, like I felt such darkness on the inside because it was just me and my mom, and seeing my mom sick like that, I felt powerless. I felt it's just a terrible feeling. And then on the other side of that, carrying the secret that I thought marked me as deficient or impure or an abomination, that was a terrible feeling. And I think anyone, and I'm a Christian, so for me, growing up, it was really hard to reconcile my faith and sexuality. And I think those things, when you're a child, it's just so hard to piece together. So I didn't know how to show people the darkness on the inside, so I just kept the outside funny. So it was a coping mechanism outlet, but it was also kind of like a Band-Aid. I used it as a way to not completely heal. I would go back and forth with that, but I think finding that balance later in life it's still an ongoing process.
Yeah, I think about all the ways in which that theme is relatable. I think we all hide in some aspects of our lives to do more of what's expected of us, to be more
That's
of what's
right.
expected of us. It's really funny because I hadn't thought about this until now, but I'm a Gemini, and so we're kind of
Ooh.
known to wear two different,
Yes, you are.
personalities. Yeah. But I really have seen that come through in my life from a professional versus a personal sense. Like, uh, up until recently, where I've been making this bold move transition into more of, living in alignment with really who I am and doing the things that I really know I'm meant for. I think there was such a time frame in my life where professionally I was just literally putting on the mask of what I saw other people doing to be
Yep.
the leader. Like, what does a leader look like? And whatever that was, that's who I was, right? I was a
Yep.
chameleon in that sense. But I know what you mean. It gets to a place where it just you start to feel so confined and
Small.
small, and like your voice isn't being heard and resentful, and it comes out in a lot of different ways that are probably not great. I think that a lot of people can understand that they're hiding in some way, shape, or form, but really from your experience, it sounds like once you were able to come out, also, deal use humor in a positive way, not from a hiding way. That was kind of a, a path to some positive changes that you've been making.
Absolutely. It is. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad you said that too, because we shouldn't ever look at this as something that's just done. And I think that's a big message you have to share, isn't it, Trey?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there really is no finish line,
Mhm.
right? Like I think it's there are many finish lines where you just want to get over this obstacle, you want to get over this milestone, you want to get over this challenging season or this great season. There are finish lines in that sense, but I think in terms of overall growth and well-being and evolution, I don't know if I believe in a real finish line.
Yeah, same. I've been seeing that more clearly too. In your book, Atlanta, which is the city we both live in right now, but
Yes, good old
good
Atlanta.
old Atlanta, but you grew up in a town, Leesburg, South Georgia, which, by the way, Trey, I had never heard of before reading your book, so it must be a very small town.
Ooh. So I grew up in Marietta, was living in Leesburg though, but still same thing, like super small town. Yes, yeah.
Very small town. And it sounded like to me in the, kind of as you got into your like high school years, you started to really think of Atlanta. It actually became to me another character in your book because it felt to me like it was this figure of hope and change. Like if I can just get to Atlanta, or when I get to Atlanta, everything would be different. That's
Yeah,
what I kind of was
yeah.
taking away when I was reading it. What were you running away from that Atlanta could distance you from?
I think Atlanta, if I'm looking at it in two separate paths, right? Atlanta, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, Atlanta for me opened up my eyes because I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta and Marietta, and it was late 90s, early 2000s. There weren't a lot of, like, I just didn't have any exposure to gay people. So that for me was like it was a major turning point, because when I started going into the city, I realized that there were people who were like me that were normal. They had normal jobs, they had friends, they had a social life, and nobody was like, hey, there's that, gay person. It was just like, whatever. It was just like someone with brown hair or blonde hair comes in, and I like that. I love I view Atlanta as this cultural mecca of all different types of people, and I just love that. The second part of that with Atlanta was after my mom died. The last 6 months of her life, I was living in Leesburg, so you're totally correct in that. And just in my mind, I was like, man, if I can just get back to Atlanta, for me mentally, I would at least be somewhere familiar, somewhere progressive, somewhere where people are like me. And you can find that here. I didn't really feel like I had many resources when I was in Leesburg. And I had never lived in a town that small. I mean, I think Leesburg at the time had maybe 3,000 people. The high school that I went to had over 3,000 kids. I mean, my freshman high school class, I think, had 1,100 students. So it was a total shock for me to be somewhere so small. It was really hard. So Atlanta, at that time in my life, became like the North Star. I was like, I've got to get back to Atlanta.
The metaphor is so awesome because it's like I'm hearing from you that you could be yourself here. You found people that would accept you 100% for who Trey is. And I think that people who are struggling often feel isolated. And
For sure.
and then isn't this community piece part of the healing? Is like being, and I think that's and I'm not familiar with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, but I understand that you're then in community with people who are dealing with and going through challenges and trying to heal and grow in the same ways you are, which has a real
Yeah.
effect on your ability to transform. And so that's, I think that Atlanta kind of became this I can be myself place.
It did. 100%. Yeah.
So when you got here, because you got here, and you talked about
I
the
did.
two times, did it hold up to your version of what it would be for you?
The first time, yes, when I was younger, 100%. Like in my 20s, I needed that. And 24 was the big turning point for me in Atlanta. Coming back to Atlanta after my mom died, I thought when I moved back, that would fix me. And I was incredibly naive. I thought if I was near Jess, if I was near all of my other friends, if I was near restaurants that weren't chains, if I was around, culture, all of these things, I was like, well, it's going to be good. Like, of course, it's going to be like riding a bike. I'm going to get back in. Everything's going to be great. Couldn't have been further from the truth. The second time, I hit rock bottom when I came back the second time. And when I look at that in hindsight, the physical space that you're in, of course, safety and all that stuff aside, like a place, a house, a state, a city isn't going to magically fix anything. It's just not. Like, that work has to come from within. And unfortunately for me at the time, I just didn't know any better. And that when I came back, I felt like an alien because I didn't know how to act around my friends, because I didn't feel like making people laugh. I didn't know how, and I just didn't. I felt like a total bump on a log going out, and that kind of led me to, the substance abuse issues that followed that, because I didn't feel like myself, and I'd had periods in my life where I felt like foreign, but never like that, ever.
When you came back the second time to Atlanta, you mentioned you had been around friends, I don't know, previous friends maybe, but did you then like get involved because you were kind of in the negative pattern, the negative behaviors? Was the community you were surrounding yourself with the wrong types of people, and that further enhanced the problem of the spiral you were in?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I had what I would refer to as like a secret group of friends that I didn't really share. There wasn't any cross-pollination with my core group of friends or sub-core group of friends. And the reason for that was because they weren't making the best decisions. And even though my regular friends, they partied, it wasn't like this hidden group of friends. So yeah, I mean, I know it sounds very cliche, but it's like when you have people that are suffering or that are in pain, and you surround yourself with people that are also suffering and in pain, but they're not doing something to elevate themselves in a positive way. They just want to kind of stay in that cycle of circling like a vulture. You mentioned that at the top of the call, and it's like that's what I was doing. And I surrounded myself with vultures, and these vultures were doing a lot of drugs, and they weren't doing anything to improve their life in a positive light. So yeah, I mean, it was like adding gasoline to a fire. And but that was my decision. Like, I did that, and it is what it is. I'm grateful that I made it out, and I'm grateful that I learned from it, for sure.
I'm hearing another example of hiding again, in a different sense, where the secret group of friends was another way that you were just hiding your pain from the people that, the core group of friends and other people that might be able to, I don't know, embrace you for what you needed. But yeah, it's
I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I'm not trying to make this like a, morality police, but like, I wasn't brought up to or around things like what I was doing. And I knew in my heart that I knew that I was screwing up like really bad. And I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed because, at this time in my life, I was 28 years old. And, I felt like my friends had already kind of moved on, and they were starting to, get in these long-term relationships and talk about marriage and kids. And I was like, oh my God, like, my mom just died. I didn't have a job, couldn't find a job. And I was just spiraling. So I was embarrassed. I was like, man, I didn't, but I also didn't want, especially, and I wrote about this, there are a couple friends that are, really close, and one is Forkel. I wrote about her in the book as well. And then Jess, I felt embarrassed, and I knew that if they knew what I was doing, they would be really worried, and I didn't want to add worry onto them because I knew that they were already worried about me enough.
What, now looking back and you've been able to reconcile all of these experiences, what do you advise, or can, if people were to come to you now and ask, I'm going through a really difficult time, Trey, and I know that you've been through your share of difficult times, and I'm having a hard time lifting myself out of it, and I feel like I'm getting into destructive behaviors. What would be your best advice for them?
What happens to you doesn't decide who you'll become. And it won't always be this way. It's a temporary feeling that sucks. It's really hard. And I think sometimes when people give advice, they're coming from a good place and they want to say, like, oh, it's not that bad, or, you'll get through this, you're strong. I think it's okay to say this is going to suck and be really shitty for a long time. I think you're going to go through some stuff that's going to hurt. I think you're going to have a lot of moments that you feel like a total freak of nature, but you will get through this and you'll come out of it on the other side. And I think in terms of the self-destructive behavior, man, there's just nothing that is going to make a bad situation worse than doing something self-destructive like that. And when it comes to drugs, I mean, now it's just like, you don't even know what's in. It's just, life is too much of a gift to drown yourself away like that. And in my opinion, that negative energy, like energy can't be destroyed, all that, right? So take that anger, take that rage, take whatever it is that would make you want to abuse a substance and maybe find another outlet, whether that's running or walking or going to a smash room or just going in your car and screaming. Like, find people around you that will champion for you, that'll say, look, I'm going to meet you where you are right now and we're going to get through this together. And when you put yourself around people that really care about you and they care about themselves, then it's contagious. Like, it really is contagious. You're like, oh, my friend's a go-getter, my friend volunteered. Like, you just you swap it out, and instead of like, oh, well, my friend gets blackout drunk and does a lot of blow on Fridays, like, you start to trade and you start to see like different patterns of behavior. And when you elevate your group based on just furthering life, I think that transforms everything.
This is a scientifically proven fact that when you surround yourself with people who you want to be like, or you put yourself in situations with people who are a little further ahead of you on the journey, it is scientifically proven that you will start to act like those people.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, totally.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe it was sort of midway in the book, but I found myself really cheering for you and getting excited and behind you.
Thank you, Kristen. You're the best. I love you to pieces. Thank you.
Yes, I did. I really did, Trey. I was rooting for you the whole time. But I know you now, and I'm like, okay, he's here, so that's good, But there's a lot of tragedy in the book. So we got to a place though where it was your first time in Atlanta, and you hit the comedy scene.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh my gosh, I thought his world is going to open up and now everything is going to be great. And so I'd love for you to just bring us into that time period and talk about how you found I'm getting the sense, Trey, that this was your true, authentic, free self when you were doing comedy. And so I would love for you to kind of share that chapter of your life.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Kristen. That is one of my favorite chapters in life. And I loved writing it. I loved living it. And I love talking about it because I really do believe in the power of humor. And, my entire life I've been the class clown. I write about that a lot in the book and have shared that with you here. And I'd worked full time since I was 15. I'd always had a job. I was in school full time and in college at the time I was 24. And my mom, I had to take some time off of school to help with my mom because she had been really sick. So my college experience I crushed it academically, but it wasn't a traditional college experience. And in June, it was June 9th, 2009, I was fired from my retail job for uploading pictures of customers on Facebook, which in hindsight, I realized that probably wasn't the best decision, but it was really funny. And we didn't know any better. I mean, Facebook was king, nothing else existed. It was innocuous. I mean, it was literally someone came in with like white socks to their knees and red clogs, and I put like a caption, "What not to wear," and no faces, like whatever, like it wasn't awful. So anyways, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. So I was terminated from that role, and I was like, I found like a link online to an open mic at this comedy club called the Laughing Skull Lounge in Midtown Atlanta. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna send him a little email, and I got booked. And June 24th, 2009, it was a Wednesday. It was the first time that I'd ever performed. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like I was doing something that I was meant to do. And I say that not because I'm painting myself as this epic comedian or anything of that nature. I'm saying it in context that is, growing up, there are kids that are, just academic. They just crush it in school naturally, or they're athletes and it's just a gift from God. They just have that. I didn't have any of that. Like, humor for me is that gift, and the stage, man, I tell you, it was just like, I can't even explain it. It was like an out of body experience. And I felt like the first time I performed transformed my life in the best way possible, because that was the first time that I'd ever spoken about my sexuality in a public setting, and it was an accident. And I never looked back after that. And I am forever grateful to Marshall Childs. He was the owner of Laughing Skull Lounge, but now has a new venture, Whiplash Comedy. I believe it's opening later this fall. But I'm just grateful forever for Marshall, because he gave me so many opportunities as being a green comedian, and just kind of showed me the ropes. And man, it was just awesome.
You were a natural talent, though. I remember reading in the book, and I got to come see you perform, Trey, so I definitely hope you get back on this.
We're going to do it
stand-up.
again. Oh,
I would
100%, yes.
I would love to come and be in the audience for your performance. I mean, you're just hilarious as a friend, so I can't imagine a bit. But yes, in the book, it reads very much as you had a natural gift, because I think I remember something to the extent of, you just got on this open mic, you had no materials prepared, and you just started talking, and you were getting laughs. And that is, I mean, again, no comedian here, right? I'm not a comedian, but I know that I've watched enough shows, and I know that the first many times people are on the mic, they often bomb. So I think, like, didn't you recount that Marshall saw this natural gift you had and sort of kind of started to be like, okay, this guy, he's got to be part of this experience, and really helped give you some positive opportunities at that point in your life when you probably really needed it.
That's right. Man, you're so right on that. Marshall came up to me after the show, and he was like, "Is that really the first time that you've ever performed?" And I told him the truth. And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I'd never done this before." And he was like, "I want you to come back this weekend if you can." And from there, I mean, the rest is history. I mean, it really took off. Like, I never looked back,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
And from there, it just kept growing.
So for me, when I think about how this relates to to our life experiences, it's that idea that when you are doing work or existing in your zone of genius, your natural talents and gifts, it just is almost like this life force that just pulls you, and helps you kind of step into your fullest potential, to be honest, because it's so recognizable to other people that this is what you're meant to be doing. You all have to read this book, especially, the comedy section is amazing, but Trey comes across during his stint with the Laughing Skull, he comes across Chris Tucker, Margaret Cho, Jennifer Coolidge. So some really great celebrity stories in this book too. And they all seem to have a positive impact on you, no matter if they were in your life for a moment. Like Chris Tucker, you saw him and he offered something very special to your mom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or Margaret Cho, I think, was in your life a little bit longer and really kind of took you under her wing. What did you learn from some of these people that were, that you encountered while you were in the comedy scene?
Discipline to the craft, and humility. And I say that because these are names, if you go back in time, I was 24 to 26, 27. And I didn't know anything about this world, and seeing these icons and how they interacted with people. All of the comedians that I wrote about in the book, they treated people with just total kindness, and it was just like a regular person. So that whole facade of celebrity kind of faded, and I realized, oh, they're just like us. And I think the discipline that it takes to really build a craft for yourself, and seeing comedians, and I saw it mostly with Margaret because she was in Atlanta for extended periods of time, and just seeing her workshop material over and over and over and over again, and then seeing her on the tour that she was workshopping material for, I thought was really killer. So it takes a lot of discipline. I mean, you can have a gift inherently, right? And either being a writer or a performer or both. But even on top of that, it takes massive amounts of work for any level of comedian. And I've also seen comedians, and I obviously wouldn't write about this in the book, but I've seen comedians of that caliber that didn't perform well. And that taught me, like, oh, like, you can literally be a millionaire and a famous comedian and you can still have really shitty sets. And I was like, so that gave me a little bit of breathing room and grace. And everybody would tell you that, but hearing that, you're like, yeah, I'm sure you bombed, blah, blah, blah. But when you see it, you're like, oh my God, they really bombed. But they get back on it and they crush it,
Oh my
That's a
God.
great lesson to learn.
It really is. The idea that you literally, quite literally, fail in public, and then you're like, okay, I'll do it again tomorrow night.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do it again. I'm like, wait a minute, like, how much childhood trauma does it take to get there and do that? I'm like, okay, I guess a lot. That's something I think all the comedians have in common.
No, that actually, that's that. The best well, I don't know. I can't judge the best or whatever comedians. I just know that in watching comedy, I know that a lot of times when you talk about things that have pained you in your past, typically make great comedy because you can
Yeah,
talk about it from a personal level, I guess.
totally. Well, when you open up, and that's the beautiful thing about comedy is, and I feel like this about the book as well, humor and comedy does something that when you say it and that truth comes out, the wall around everybody crumbles. And it's like when you admit that truth out loud, people want to hear that. And people, in my experience and opinion, they connect not because of some polished, perfect version, some Instagram filtered, curated, live, laugh, love crap. Like, people relate and like and connect with people because of the flawless, like because of their flaws, because of the things that are imperfect, because they see themselves in that. And humor is an amazing vehicle for that, because you can take something that is intimidating, you can take something that's taboo, you can take something that's controversial, and you can flip it on its head. And intelligent writing and intelligent delivery can take that kind of, if you think about it like a nuclear bomb, and they go in there and they wordsmith it and they diffuse it. And when you diffuse it and you hand it over to the audience, they're receptive to that message and they're like, oh shit, yeah, I relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah, they see it in their own lives too. I wish this is where the story, you become the hummingbird in your story, but we still have a while to get through to the hummingbird.
Same.
The vulture is still circling a little bit. Well, there was this hummingbird moment, and then we get back into
That's right.
another place. I want to talk about the moment, well, the two times, that you came out to your mom, and it happened twice, and so you can kind of fill everyone in about why that needed to, that happened. But it felt, in reading the book, it felt so important for you to tell your mom before she passed. And when you knew that she was getting closer, or thought she was getting closer, you felt more urgent about it. Tell me a little bit more about why it felt so important to have that conversation with your mom.
Absolutely. The first time I came out to my mom, I was just a couple weeks shy of my 20th birthday, and I had to call 911. She was turning blue. Her blood oxygen had dropped substantially. Long story short, she had a flare-up of her lung disease and was in the intensive care unit for, I think it was this time, 19 days. And I remember sitting by my mom's hospital bed, and I was just thinking in my head, like, if I don't tell my mom who I really am and something happens to her, then I don't know that I would be able to go forward without a ton of regret. And I wasn't ready to come out. Like, I know this sounds so silly even now, but I had a half bath attached to my bedroom, and it was just me because my mom was in the hospital and I was at the house. It was night. I closed the bathroom door, turned the lights off, and I was like, all right, just say it. And I was like, I'm gay. And I couldn't get the words out with just myself saying I'm gay. But I just had this tug on my heart, and I was like, all right, you got to just pull the trigger and do it. So I didn't have the courage to tell my mom in a conversation. So I wrote her a letter the first time I came out, and I was glad that it was over. I was like, thank God, I'll never have to do this again. I'll never have to come out to my mom again. I was like, this is amazing. The rest will work itself out. So I just kind of like came out to my mom. My sister knew, but it wasn't like I wasn't an openly gay person. It was just kind of like I told these two people, and that was kind of it. Well, when I was 23, I got a phone call from my mom, and she told me that she had an MRI, and they found 2 brain aneurysms, and they wanted her to do surgery almost immediately. So my mom had open cranial brain surgery, and the surgery was at Athens Regional. So I went to Kennesaw State University, so I finished my exams and drove up to Athens Regional, saw my mom, and basically with any kind of brain surgery, there's no predicted outcome. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, on one hand, my sister and I are grateful, mom survived, she's here. The surgery was a success in terms of clipping the aneurysms. But what we wouldn't know for some time is that there were definitely gaps in her memory, and some things just never came back. So I want to say maybe about a year after the surgery, I was talking to my mom on the phone, and she started asking me about, friends from high school, and then she brought up the last girl that I dated, and I was like, why are you, like, I was really confused. I was like, what? And then she was like, oh, is she seeing anybody? She was such a nice girl. And I was like, speechless. So when I got off the phone, initially I was kind of like, what in the hell is this? And I was like, oh my God, my mom doesn't remember. So she had no idea that I came out to her like 3 years prior. And I was like, I've got to do it again.
Did it feel the same level of hard that it did the first time, the second time?
The second time, from an internal perspective, was significantly better because I was comfortable in my skin. At this time, when I came out to my mom the second time, I had been performing comedy. I came out, I was an openly gay person, and I was 1000% comfortable with it. I was not like that the first time. However, the other side of that is, even though I was comfortable with who I am, my mom, I looked at her, especially after her brain surgery, like she was so fragile. And I didn't want to break her heart again. I don't want to say disappointment, because I don't think that it was a disappointment. I didn't want to hurt her. So that part was hard because I did feel like she was very fragile.
Yeah. Over the 3 years between the two times, had you and your mom discussed your lifestyle and your sexuality and dating? Because it seems to me as if it was still, even though you told her, the story hadn't progressed. There hadn't been too
That's
many.
right.
So it sounds like you didn't really understand where she was at with this still 3 years later.
Not really. I mean, we never really spoke about it. It wasn't, I don't think it was really comfortable for either one of us. it wasn't, it was definitely never like an open discussion. It wasn't,
Yeah.
I know that my mom loved me
Mhm.
unconditionally, but I just, I think it was challenging for her to understand because of where and when she grew up
Mhm.
and just exposure to it.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look
Mhm.
back at, I think it was in 2008, I mean, even the state of California
Yes.
voted against gay marriage. So it's like, I mean, if that happened in California of all places, then how in the world can somebody in Georgia, you know, stand a chance? So we've just made a ton of progress. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
I really do. And I'm like, how would that conversation go today? But yeah.
I think that a lot of people experience that in different ways in their life, where you and your values and how you've grown up as an adult and, you know, influenced by where you live and your community, may differ from
For sure.
your parents, or, you know, your adult figures in your life, parental figures in your life. And I know that tension too, where the relationship with your family is so important, and you know that the values are different. And so how do you come together and have those difficult, very difficult conversations, and still maintain that same closeness, that you want, that you really want? How did she react the second time that you told her?
She told me that she loved me unconditionally. She asked me if I was sure, and she then said, I don't want anyone to hurt you because of that. And my take on it is, I believe that my mom thought being gay was still considered like living in the underbelly of society, and you know, people would maybe do something in terms of a hate crime or missing out on opportunities for work or things like that. So I think my mom, her heart was always in the right place. I think she looked at it as like, I just want your life not to be any more challenging than it's already been. So that's how I believe that she interpreted that. But you know, after I came out the second time, we still never really talked about it. I mean, even though I was comfortable being gay, I think it just felt really awkward for me to talk about it, and it wasn't natural, which is weird because I can talk to a wall, but it wasn't a comfortable thing for me to talk about that part of my life with my family. And I own responsibility for that, I guess, but it's just, it's weird because I feel like when you suppress something for so long, it takes a lot of work, a lot of really hard work to normalize that conversation. And even though, you know, I was an adult, technically, I still had so much learning left to do, you know? Dude, no joke. It's so true, man. And that you know what, Kristen, that is one of those situations. Like, I thought that is exactly it. Yeah, nail on the head. Oh yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, 100%. It's always like that, I'm sure, for sure.
As difficult as those experiences were with your mom, reading it and hearing you explain it now actually comes across very tender and beautiful to me, because it really shows the strength of a mother-son bond or a mother-child bond, and that,
For sure.
you know, when the relationship is functioning, you know, and the not toxic, I guess, at the end of the day, regardless of what agreements or disagreements you might have and who each other is, you will still always have the same end goal, which is unconditional love for each other, and nothing can break that.
Yeah, that's right.
One of my most favorite parts of the book comes towards the end. It's the Guatemala story.
Yeah,
So, and you know, actually, the first time I met you, Trey, you told me this Guatemala story, and it was a really impactful thing that, you know, kind of helped turn the corner for you. I'd love for you to share that, what the Guatemala experience was all about, and why that had such a profound impact on you.
absolutely. And December of 2014, my partner Michael and I went to Guatemala on a volunteer experience where we were working in Antigua and right outside of Antigua with underserved communities. So elderly care facility, special needs orphanage, and like a school. And that was actually my first time out of the country. And since then, it's just lit a fire of travel. And I was coming off of such a dark tailspin of losing my mom. And that was kind of that 18 months that I was talking about from April 2013 to December 2014. And I'd started to kind of come out of that. I'd stopped making really bad decisions and all of that stuff had ended, but my head was still not in the right space. And I was still asking, why me, to a certain degree. And at this special needs orphanage in Guatemala, looking at all of the kids, and I went to the program director and I looked at one of the kids and I was like, what's her story? How did she get here? How did any of these kids get here? And, they explained to me that this one child, she was born healthy and normal, and her parents on some random day decided to take their baby out on a walk and walk by the dumpster and open it up and drop the baby in. And the child was in there for like a couple of days, and the bacteria and feces and everything got into her brain, and she would never recover. But thank God someone found her and they were able to save her life. And hearing that story, it changed my life almost instantly, because even though what I'd been through sucked, it was really hard, it was traumatizing, I still had my mom for 28 years and 2 days, and this child had none of that. And I felt really ashamed, but I also felt really motivated to never look back in that dark direction again. And that's where the Hummingbird kind of came from. And I really have not been, in a good way, the same person since then. It changed my life.
What is the comparison between the vulture and the hummingbird?
Yeah, for sure. So vultures and hummingbirds, they cover the same ground. They fly in the same sky, but the vultures are trained to hunt for decay and hunt for things that have already given up the fight. And they always come back with it because that's literally what they're trained and designed to do. Hummingbirds, on the other hand, they're still hunting, but they're hunting for color. And they look and find that bare spot with the blossom coming up from the ground that everybody else walks by, and they still see it. And that is their life force, that color. And to me, it's just that simple, right? Like, we can't eradicate the bad things that are going on, the good, the bad, the light, and the dark. They're always going on in tandem. These two things have to coexist. So knowing that we can't control really anything, all we can control is how we perceive things. So do you want to go through your life like a vulture, where you're circling the same thing over and over, picking apart the bad stuff, spreading that around to other people? Or do you want to be the hummingbird that goes out into the world and you're like, I acknowledge all of this crazy shit, that's going on, but instead of dwelling on that, I'm gonna find the good, because there's always something good in that scenario. And that's kind of what I live by. There's always a splash of color somewhere. You just have to look for it. Even if it's something silly, like I woke up today and didn't have any knee pain going down the stairs, like that, it's I sneezed and pull my back. There's always something.
And when we get older, maybe that is important.
I'm not speaking from personal experience or anything. It's just, I read about it on a blog.
I don't know, maybe I am.
No, I really did. I pulled my back out sneezing a couple weeks ago, so it was not good. I was like, what did I do?
You know what? So relatable. A lot of these listeners are middle-aged people, so they know. I hope you all can understand. But yes, I'm experiencing that.
Brutal.
When I went to your book party, your book launch party, you read the passage around the vulture and the hummingbird, and it really has stuck with me ever since. I love that. I love the idea that it is a choice on how your perspective is a choice. Sometimes it is not easy to see the positive it's really not.
No.
But I think your message here is just even the present moment. What is the little thing in the present moment that you can see the best about?
That's right. It really is that simple.
What are you doing today to choose this mindset every day? What does that actually look like for you?
Ooh, gosh, that's a good Oprah that's a good Oprah question. I think it's a constant choice. I think it's a constant choice of when I find myself thinking in a spiral-like mentality, right, where I'm thinking about what isn't going the way that I want it to. This scenario didn't pan out in the way that I wanted it to. I have to check myself, and I'm like, you know what? I want to see this like a hummingbird, and I really do have to just reset my mind and think about the positive things that are going on, because sometimes if you spend so much time dwelling on what we think things should be like, you miss out on the way things are and the way they're designed to be. So it's really just a gut check, a constant back and forth. Like if I find myself thinking about things in a negative regard, I'm like, no. Like I need to take a step back and I need to find something positive, like something good.
Yeah. Life continues to life, and
Yes, it does.
yes, and we're going to close for today, but when you pick up this book, you'll learn, about all of the ways in which Trey has had to navigate this journey so far, and what he's navigating in this next phase of his life now. And it sounds as if this new perspective you have is going to help you continue to walk in the light rather than kind of go back into some of those vulture-like behaviors.
Right.
I am so grateful that you're here today, Trey. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's really been a highlight of my year to get to know you better. So thank you for everything that you've brought to me as well. I really appreciate it.
Kristen, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your friendship, and thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.
Where can listeners buy your book and connect with you, Trey?
Oh my goodness. That is a great question. You can buy the book anywhere books are sold. Amazon is super convenient, so you can go on there, Barnes & Noble, but anywhere you want to get the book, you can. And in terms of connection, I'm on Instagram, Toler_the_Trey. TikTok's the same thing, but I'm not really active on TikTok or LinkedIn.
Fine.
Just Trey Toler.
I'll put Trey's handles in the show notes for you all. Definitely connect with him there. Also, maybe there will be some book tour dates coming. We're putting it out in the universe.
Yes, we will. We'll put it out there.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.